Welcome back. I'm here with Steve Kamb. Steve is the ultimate example of let your freaking geek flag fly, man. Nerd Fitness. I want to talk about your sleepover camps for adults that you host. What you've done, I wouldn't even call it like the fitness industry. What you've done to create your own category in one of, if not the most saturated markets out there, the fitness market, the health market, the look better, feel better type market. You've just created this completely new category of your own, and you've done it over the years through a combination of content, but also just really creative product that very much aligns with what you do. And I'm excited to get into that a lot, kind of going back. I think you're one of the few people I'm talking to that actually started your blog before mine. You started what, 2008 or something like that?
Yeah, I think I bought the domain in 2007,
And so the
and
domain
then
is Nerd Fitness for anybody who
Nerd
doesn't know. And
Fitness, I
you
bought
get
it.
about 500,000 visitors a month still. Is that about right?
Yes, sir. I think so, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I looked, but I think it's somewhere
Yeah.
around there. And obviously we can talk about all that. First of all, I'm just really glad to be here. It's great to see you, and as two OGs that have been at this for
Oh, I know. It's funny.
God knows how long. I'm just excited to be here and talk about all this stuff.
And to look at you too. So like you and I talk like reasonably often, but we'll do like walking, talking chats. And so I don't think I've ever actually like physically looked at you while we're speaking, or even really knew what you look like beyond like a couple pictures on the internet that are
That's
always the
wild,
same.
right? But like, I feel like I
It's
know you better than I know many of my friends.
it's a super
And
weird.
but yeah, you're right. So great for us to finally say talk face to face, even though we're on two opposite parts of North America.
Okay, so I want to start with a name. Who's Adam Baker?
Adam Baker was the guy that taught me how to not suck at blogging.
Okay.
Um, he wrote an article way back in 2000 and must have been 2009 called "How to Not Suck at Blogging," and I read it.
It's a
And
good
I was
title.
like, "Oh my god, I suck at blogging. I was doing everything wrong. I was writing
How? How?
Sure, I was writing very short articles because I was told people don't have long attention spans.
Hmm.
I was writing topical content because I thought you needed to write about things that were happening at that moment. And I was publishing 5 days a week because you have to publish consistently, otherwise people are going to forget that you're there. So I was doing all of those
Right.
things, and I had no traction. I mean, I think after 9 months I had maybe like 80 email subscribers.
Yep.
And that was probably like half of them were my friends out of pity, and the other half was like just random people that stumbled across articles. So I read Baker's article, and it was "How to Not Suck at Blogging," and it was write long, in-depth pieces full of personality and research about topics that are interesting to you. I was like, oh, that sounds way better. Let me try that. And
This
and
sounds
sure
way
enough,
less soul sucking. That sounds wonderful.
yeah,
Yeah.
and sure enough, within like 3 weeks, I had published. That I was like, I'm going to publish twice a week, and they're going to be 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 words, and it's going to be full of nerd references that make me laugh when I write them. And let's just try that. And like right away, it was like, oh, the number of comments on blog posts, the number of shares on Twitter or Facebook or whatever started growing pretty rapidly, and it was like, oh. Yeah, this is way better. I'm just going to keep doing it this way. And through a series of random events and various things, Adam Baker is now the CEO of Nerd Fitness. All these 15 years later. So
I didn't even know that. Oh, that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. I've we can talk about. I'm working on a secret project on the side, but I realized that I love making stuff, and I'm not great at managing people. So let's put somebody in charge that is really good at those things, and let me get back to doing the thing that I love to do. So in a wild series of events, Baker was somebody who wrote on his own website, and I was a fan of. And here we are 15 years later. He is now the CEO of Nerd Fitness, which is kind of wild.
That's cool. Well, here's what's crazy to me is that everything's new and yet nothing seems to be different, doesn't it? This was back in 2008. And the general advice was people have short attention spans. Nobody reads anymore. 2008, most people who used Facebook were using it with colleges. Social media was not prevalent. None of it, and social media, it's not that social media didn't exist. It did, but it wasn't in your face the same way. Its traction was not the same. But it also wasn't yet designed to be addictive to producers of content. I think that that's an aspect of the history of social media that isn't spoken about enough. There was a point, and the way that I remember it is, do you remember Periscope?
Yep.
So Periscope was like a Snapchat, was a Vine, was like one of these things that you had a Clubhouse, one of these things you had to use or you were going to be behind. And I don't know, anybody who's been around for long enough knows that it's just another fucking thing. But Periscope, to the best of my memory, was the first system that figured out that if you addict the producers of content, the system works a lot better. Up until then, it was always addictive to the consumers. But what Periscope figured out with all these little hearts, they basically made it like a Japanese video game. It was like beep, boop, beep, 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 all these little reward mechanisms and your dopamine and firing from your nucleus accumbens, right, of these hearts popping up on your screen whenever anybody liked your thing. And now we see that all over the place. Now it's commonplace. But none of that existed back in 2008, and yet the same advice was there. People have short attention spans. You have to do topical content. All of this stuff, it didn't work then. It also, I don't think, really works now. Yes, some people have short attention spans. Those people also don't buy shit.
Exactly.
But also, the big thing now, when you see this content everywhere, with particularly like the short form video reels and stuff, where all of them try to hook and get a lot more views if they start with like a famous person or a reference to like a famous person. All these threads on Twitter and the same type of thing with these videos. The problem is nobody cares about the person producing the material. And so an eyeball is not an eyeball is not an eyeball is not an eyeball. And it's such an interesting case of what you figured out in 2008.
Right?
Where,
Like it's in retrospect, just like, yeah, of course, like when you're writing about something that's interesting and exciting to you, so much so that you're willing to put weeks into a single article, like it's gonna be better. And in a internet world of abundance, like you're not just competing. I can't remember where I read this, but it's like you're not just competing against like whatever else got published that day. Like you're competing against everything that had been previously published on the internet that is still getting shared. So as a result, like your stuff has to be really, really, really good, or really, really interesting, or stand out in such a unique way that people have to comment on it or have to share it with somebody. And
unique,
the only way
right?
that happens is if you're doing like you're it's aligned with your strengths. Like it's not going to be doing it the way that other people doing it. It's doing it your way. And that's like it took me a year and a half of trying to be like everybody else that eventually I started being like myself. That sounds so corny, but weirdly it worked.
But I feel like everybody, not, I can't say everybody. I hate it when people say stuff like everybody. I feel like that story is very common. The story is common to me. It takes a while to find your voice. And this is why I look at content creation. It's not a short-term game. I look at it as a savings account. You make investments into it when you have excess time and capital, and you hope that it kicks off interest, but you don't depend on that interest. Whereas a lot of the ways that it's being communicated right now is, oh, just create content and then ... question mark, question mark, question mark, make internet money. And we all know the South Park underpants gnomes meme.
Oh yeah.
Right? Collect underpants, question mark, profit. And at a certain point in time, you'd think that one of the wise old gnomes would stand up and he would say, yo, gnomies, we've been stealing underpants for a while. We ain't got no profit. what are we doing here? But at that point, they've become so good at stealing underpants that it's just something that they do.
Right.
And I
Exactly.
wonder that with content creation, the way that it's most commonly spoken about, as opposed to how you've done it, which is like, yo, I'm gonna let my geek flag fly. So what were some of the things you did? I like that idea of like, does this make me laugh when I write this? What were some of the changes that you made? And this is not just for any blogs. This is for any type of media, anything you want to do, how you communicate, right?
Sure. I mean, so the site is called Nerd Fitness, but it wasn't because I saw a future trend coming of like, oh, being nerdy is going to be cool. I was like, I'm just a dork that plays a lot of video games, and I want to help other dorks trying to get their lives together. And
Yeah.
after starting the site, and then Star Wars, like Disney bought Star Wars, Disney bought Marvel. The whole Marvel Cinematic Universe becomes a thing. Like being nerdy became cool, and being fit and nerdy became cool. Like
Yeah.
that was not. I didn't see that coming. I was just like, I play video games and I read Lord of the Rings, and I love nerding out about topics. So I the things that I think worked for me on the writing front was I have a really wide base of things that are interesting or exciting to me, and I love nerding out about those topics. I have this wall behind me, as you can see,
Right.
is full of my favorite games, my favorite books, my favorite activities, the things that I love to do. So my writing kind of captures that frenetic, just all over the place, like how my brain operates. I mean, it's like random asides. It's almost like a Family Guy episode, but I'm trying to teach people things where it's just like random jokes that don't make sense in the middle of an article about how to cook, how to learn to like vegetables. It's like
But they make sense to you.
100%, and it's
Right.
entertaining for me to write it, which is
Yes.
like if I'm not entertained writing it, I wear my heart on my sleeve, as anybody could tell you. So when I'm excited about something, I'll run through a brick wall for it, and when I'm
Mm-hmm.
not excited about something, that's also very obvious. So when I'm excited to like, oh my god, this reference or this idea or this concept is so stupid and funny that it's making me laugh to myself,
Yeah.
like I cannot wait to hit publish on that
I love
article to
that.
see how people respond to it. And it's like that's the thing I chased for years, was just like, let's find a topic, let's find some fun angles for it. Oh, what did I watch this past week? What did I do this past week? Like, let's throw some of that stuff in there. Like, make people feel like they're reading Steve Kamb's brain. So when they meet me, they're like, you're exactly like I expected. Like,
Mm.
great, because I am, because that's who I am when I write. That's who I am in my videos. Like, I am the same person.
There was a book that I read. I'm sure you've probably read the same one, On Writing by Stephen King, and it's a great book about writing. Do you have it behind you?
It's right behind me.
I can't see close enough, but
It's
that's
the
funny.
it's the third book up.
Amazing. But it's really about writing fiction. But I mean, fiction is great storytelling. So anything you want to communicate, if you like the best writers read a lot of fiction. Even if you write nonfiction books, you read a lot of fiction because it's just great storytelling. And I actually find that I learn more through fiction than I do through nonfiction. But at the same time, one of the pieces of advice that he gave in that book was an advice for writers, but I think it's an advice for communicators as a whole, which is the worst thing that you can ever do is second guess something that you want to insert into your writing. So if you think of the first word or the first idea that you think about is almost always going to be the best one. But we all have this internal block where we second guess it, and then we usually replace it with something bland. And I found that it's been so valuable to just revisit that line over and over and over again. For example, I mean, I've spoken to you about it, but the proposal for the book, for the Obvious Choice book, there's a line in the book, and this might make it to the final book, this might not, but there's a line in the final book that's like, now brace yourself, because I'm about to kick you in the ego nuts. And this is like like a very professional business book, right? But it's now brace yourself because I'm about to kick you in the ego nuts. And my agent was going through, the proposal, and she changed that line to now brace yourself because I'm going to knock you over your ego's head or something like that. And I changed it right back. I was like, well, I changed this in the final book, but I don't know, man. There's something about ego nuts that's just funny to me. And overwhelmingly, there's another line in there about I don't even remember the context, but the line is like some carny chugging chocolate milk in the sun. and like overwhelmingly all of the beta readers underline those lines, and they're just like, don't remove this, don't remove this, don't remove this. But my internal block for both of those lines was, oh my God, what are people going to think? Because it's a part of putting yourself out there, isn't it? Personally.
Sure. Well, you also like, there's party that's probably like, well, this might offend, or, oh, I kind of need to hedge my bet on this thing to make sure I feel inclusive in this other area. And like, there might be some instances for that. But, the best example I can think of would be, Mark Manson's Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Like, Mark, I'm guessing, and having talked with him, we mostly talk about video games. But when we're not talking about video games, knowing like what he had to go through to get them to agree to putting an F-bomb in the title of his book
on the cover
was a big deal. And they were like, what if we changed it to this? Or what if, because then this company or this whatever, this book company won't cover it.
They won't put it on shelves. Yeah.
Right. And then he was like, no, like this is the hill I'm going to die on. I'm just going to come out with this cover and this title. And sure enough, every year now it's like literally every other book on the bookshelf has F in the title, which is like, they learned the wrong lesson from Mark's book, which is like, when he did it, it was edgy and cool, because it was not edgy and cool, but rather like the subtle art of, and then like, oh my God, like, right. What an interesting, like, I have to pick that book up. And now literally every book has F-bomb in the title, because they're like, oh, that's what it is. It's the swear. And it's like, no, it's not the swear. It's like it's that twist that you weren't expecting that got you to pick it up. And now that everybody's doing it, it's like, it doesn't have that impact, because it's not what they learned, the wrong lesson.
Yeah. It's such a common title convention to have some element of intrigue. Like, you think about some of the most famous titles, like The War of Art. There's so many examples like that, where you have, even Atomic Habits is similar to that, right? You have one thing that almost contradicts the other, and there's intrigue that forms. But yeah, I remember talking to Mark about that too, and he's just like, God, I hate this trend that I started.
It's like, I don't want to be the F-bomb guy, it's like, I know,
basically
bro,
that guy.
It's fine. Like, that guy. But now he's like, he's obviously a prolific creator, and when you're the one that creates the trend, you kind of get to decide what the next one's going to be too. So it's been fun watching everything that he puts out.
Tell me what Rising Heroes was.
Rising Heroes.
I told you we're going way back.
Yeah, Rising Heroes. Well, there's been like 4 iterations of Rising Heroes, I think. So, as you mentioned earlier, Nerd Fitness has largely operated outside of the fitness community since the beginning, and going out of our way to target and welcome people that do not feel welcome in gyms, do not feel welcome. Or do not feel inspired or motivated by really fit people on Instagram. Nerd Fitness
culture, like gym culture is such a, like, why do you feel like you need to take off your shirt? Do abs matter? Like, you look at any top athlete, and like most of them don't have visible abs. So like, is it really actually a performance thing? It's such a ridiculous culture in some ways.
Absolutely. So I wanted Nerd Fitness to be that home for people that didn't feel like they had one in the health and fitness space. And for me, that was doubling down on the things that I love. And for me, like, the idea of making health and fitness fun and enjoyable, and mixing it with not just nerd culture, but like you mentioned, I learn more from fiction than I do from nonfiction as well. Yeah. And like my favorite fictional stories and characters and so on. So Rising Heroes was, how do we take, hey, do this workout, hey, eat like this, hey, whatever it may be, um, but mix it with all the stuff that we love when it comes to nerd culture. So it was, I think initially it was like a role playing game where like you could earn points and level up.
Yeah.
But then when we like really officially launched it, it was more like we were a secret society of underground rebels fighting against, fighting against like the, oh God, what did we call them? Almost like the oppressive conspiracy behind the scenes. And this, I launched this back in 2017. I think what's funny is like, to launch it, I wrote emails saying like, guys, I went to the New York City library and inside this book, I found this weird letter and it told me to fly to this part of the world.
Right.
And I was like, the next email was like, I think somebody's following me. And we get emails from people saying like, are you okay? I'm like, no, like you didn't read the PS. This is a game. This is a game. We're doing like alternate reality game. And people could like join factions, and those factions would have to complete missions. And those missions generally involve like building a walking habit or drinking more water. I mean, it's the basic fitness stuff, but wrapped in a really fun. So I think we ran it for probably 3 years. We had like story writers, and there was like evolving characters, and it was pretty cool. I'm really, it was one of those things that was like so much work, and really involved. But for the people that loved it or got into it, really, really loved it, and followed the story through all the way to the end.
I think what that highlights is, for almost anything that anybody does, whatever they do, whether it's whatever industry you're in, what your customers actually need is not complicated. And it's also probably something that a whole bunch of people other than you, and this is where I'm going to kick you in the ego nuts, can provide to them in a perfectly good enough way. And I think consumers largely kind of know this. Like everybody says, everybody asks, this is one of the problems with surveys, in that if you ask somebody a survey, or if you take a survey, you do a focus group or whatever it is, people tend to act like maximizers. They'll tell you that they want the best product or the best service at the best price. But then you watch what they actually do, and then they buy Starbucks coffee. And you're like, why are you buying the worst coffee at the most expensive price? Like, that doesn't, you told me that you wanted the opposite, right? Because people want to appear as if they're making good decisions to their contemporaries, to others, right? But they actually don't really care, right? In almost every case, what's called satisfice. This is something from the political scientist Herbert Simon, who first came out with it. And so it's not, I think it's just important to appreciate that what our customers need, whatever it is actually not that complicated. And even an amateur could provide them with a good enough product or service to help them achieve whatever they want to achieve. How are you going to stand out and let your geek flag fly in a way that it's going to be unique to them?
Sure. I think the other thing that's important too is, like you said, surveys can only tell you so much. We deal with it with our, we have we have a coaching program, and 1,500 active clients right now, I think. A team of coaches at Nerd Fitness, and people come to us and they say like, I want a meal plan. I want you to give me a meal plan.
Right. Why?
They don't want a meal plan. What they want.
Why do you want a meal plan?
Right. What they really, and then it's like, that's amazing. Okay. Like, what do you want? Like, what they really want is they want peace of mind that they can they want to outsource that portion of their brain that like the anxiety around like, oh my God, what should I eat today? Oh my God, I have to decide what I'm going to eat again tomorrow. I just want somebody else to tell me how to eat, and then I'll totally follow it. And it's like, you won't. You're going to follow it for 3 days, and then your kid's going to get sick, or work is going to suck, and then you're going to go to McDonald's, or you're going to order pizza, or you're going to order sushi, And then you'd be like, well, my meal plan's ruined because I couldn't stick with it. It's like, no, like you didn't want the meal plan in the first place. You wanted the peace of mind that you thought the meal plan would give you. And instead, let's focus on the tools and the tactics and the strategies and the coping mechanisms we need for when life inevitably throws us that daily curveball that we weren't expecting.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to ask that one more question. Same thing. It's like, if somebody leaves a program, why did you decide to leave? Like, oh, I'm trying to cut back on my finances. Like, they didn't cut back on Netflix. They didn't cut back on buying certain, that really fancy coffee they like. Like, they cut out this product or service because you weren't providing enough of value. So it's like you have to ask one more question to really understand that human psychology of like, what's really going on here? And what are they trying to tell me when they're not actually telling me what they're telling me?
I've always thought that it was valuable to really look at products you love using and to do a double take and say, why do I love using this thing so much? It's very hard to verbalize or even articulate often a really, really great product experience. But oftentimes what I found happens is that whoever created it or the team that created it, right, understands the deeper why so much. The hard part, of course, is that the deeper why is often below the surface and it doesn't quite meet the customer where they're at. It's what they really need, but it's not what they necessarily know that they need. I'd be curious how you get over that, because yeah, the person is saying, I need a meal plan. And you're saying, okay, cool. So what would a meal plan, what do you think you'd achieve with a meal plan? Oh, why do you think that? Oh, have you ever thought about, what a meal plan will help you overcome, just to get more information? The problem is that in order for that to happen, you have to have that conversation. How do you navigate that?
I think so. I think there's two ways, right? One is, I think it's really, you and I both know this. Some people build their audiences on Instagram or social media by trashing anybody or any tactic and saying like, oh, this person said they're going to get toned. Like, toned is a stupid word, and here's why. And it's like, but you know what they meant, right? Like, when they said they're trying to get toned, like they're looking to see a little bit of muscle definition. They want to feel good about themselves in a bathing suit. They want to look in the mirror with some confidence. Like, we know what they're getting after. So rather than saying like, that's a dumb word, which some people can build audiences around. Otherwise you could say like, hey, like this person is reaching out for help. Let's work with their language and let's meet them at their level. So like for our coaching program, that's something that we really prioritize. We do a call with anybody that is interested in joining the program. Like, you literally can't even buy it. Like, you have to get on a call with us and tell us your story, what you're struggling with, your goals, your hopes, your dreams, your fears, what's life like for you at home. And then we share how we can help in those scenarios. So we've already built up that trust. And then when somebody does join, one of the questions that we ask them is like, what are you nervous about with this program?
And that's a good question.
And within, like, I was talking to my head of coaching, Matt, about this recently, and he said something like, just reading the answer to that one question tells us so much about when and how they are going to struggle.
Yeah.
And if they're like, hey, I'm a workaholic and I'm trying to spend more time with my kids and I need to get healthy. I'm nervous that work is going to step up or take over. It's like, okay, I know this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Things are going to go great for about 2 weeks. And then they're going to struggle they're going to miss a workout, or they're going to eat poorly and they're going to feel bad about themselves. So they're going to retreat to the one area of their life where they feel like they can crush it. Right. And that's work. The one thing they said they came to us that they were really nervous about, overdoing. So when somebody says, this is what I'm nervous about, we do a lot to really build that rapport upfront when they're motivated to say like, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. We are going to struggle with that in about 3 weeks. So when you come back to me in 3 weeks and say, I missed my workout and I feel really guilty, and your big problem is that you're a people pleaser, like, it's going to happen. So like, let's just get ahead of it now. So like almost immediately we're like, hey, like, we're going to read your mind and we're going to read the future, just because that's what we're really good at. So we build that rapport up front, and get one level deeper with people. So they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. And like, they feel like we are rightfully so. We give a shit and we're on their side and we're actually there to help them.
But you make sure to open up a conversation with them. It sounds like you kind of meet them where they're at, and then
100%.
you try to scale the opportunity to figure out where they want to go. Right.
Yes, exactly.
But you got to kind of use their language to do that, which can be hard. I love this idea of just a deep user experience and a unique user experience based off of who you want to target. We have a software platform called Quick Coach. Right? I don't know if I've spoken to you about it or not, but I've got 32,000 people registered for it or something like that. I mean, like you, like I never check the numbers.
Yeah.
Like when I was doing the book proposal for this upcoming book, is the first time I have ever checked book sales in my entire life. It was the first time since 2013 that I checked website stats. It just doesn't matter, right? Because the process is what matters. Like sure. Doing the good work. A lot of people will fight me on that, but to me, it's just like the work is what matters, and all that stuff kind of is largely a distraction. Just because the data's there doesn't mean that it's important. What matters is that you know precisely who you're building your thing for. And what I want to get into with you is engineering the product or service for that specific person. So we built the software platform Quick Coach. And I know that 92% of personal trainers never have more than 10 clients at a time. I know I've advised all the other companies in the space. We've done our own research into it. And so I'm building a platform for those 92%, right, of trainers. And there's tons of product decisions then. We don't have any integrations. We don't have any automations. You don't need to automate shit. You have 10 customers. You need to send a spreadsheet to somebody else on the internet that looks nice and is easy to use. Like, that's what you're doing.
Right.
And so what's the biggest thing for them is feeling like they appear professional in the eyes of their client. And just to give one very, very specific example, one of the big stopping points is asking for money, and it's not actually accepting the money. And this is where I come down to the engineering of the thing. Accepting money is not a problem. It's asking for money and feeling like you're doing it in a professional manner. And so everybody else out there is like, okay, we're going to automate, once somebody comes in, we're going to integrate with Stripe, and then that integration is going to fire them into your thing, and then it's going to automate this email system to you. I'm like, let me remind you that we have 10 customers here. We don't need to automate anything, and we certainly don't need to pay 7% for payment processing because of these extra services and $50 a month for this platform because you have so many developers maintaining these integrations. Because none of that shit matters. Instead, you take money however you want to take money. Get it in an envelope, Venmo, email transfer, have your own Stripe account, use Wave. I don't care, right? Doesn't matter.
Yep.
All that we're doing is we're building into our system a way that you can professionally request a payment. And then you give them instructions how to pay it. And that might be a button, pay here. It might be written, give me it in an envelope. And then mark it as paid. And then set a recurring thing if you want to do it. Nothing else. So you've done this beautifully with how you've engineered your thing. Let's talk about nerd fitness camps. All these weirdos running around in costumes, saying that they're going to a workout camp, and they're really just going to like sleep in cabins at a summer camp, dressing in costumes, doing like running around.
Yeah, just like everything else. Not everything else, but it was. I attended an event years ago. It was Chris Guillebeau's World Domination Summit.
Okay.
And it was just, it was a few hundred people all there for the same reason to, people were living unconventional, building unconventional businesses and creative lives. And I attended. It was just really powerful to be in the same place as all my internet friends, which I hadn't, this was 2011, I think I attended.
Yeah.
So I came home from that.
Being an internet guy must have been very, very lonely and isolating back then.
Back in 2011, man, it was, right? I didn't know anybody else that was doing it back then. I had tons of online internet friends, but nobody else that I knew in person, I think, that was also doing what I was doing where I
Mm-hmm.
lived. So attending this in person was amazing. I thought to myself, like, there has to be a way this nerd fitness, it started as just a blog, just me writing articles. And then we added message boards, and people, in the comments became friends, and started coordinating like their own little meetups. It's like, man, it would be really cool to get this group of people together in the same place. Like, it's also a group of introverted people.
Yes.
I wonder if they'd be willing to fly across the country to attend an in-person camp. Like, that's a big hill to overcome, or hurdle to overcome. And I didn't know what I was. I never run an event before. I found a place near where I was living that was a Jewish summer camp that also hosted business
You don't need to
corporate
say
retreats.
Jewish summer camp. You could just say summer camp, and we all know it's Jewish summer camp. As a Jew who went to summer camp my whole life, the only people I know that went to summer camps are other Jews.
That's really funny.
You know what the names of my summer camps were?
What?
Shalom, Solalim, and Bilawim. You can't make this shit up. They're all Jewish camps. Go on.
That's right. Yeah. So this camp was Ramah Jerome.
Yep.
And they during the fall and spring, they rented out you can rent out the entire campgrounds. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a wild, but I'll rent out the whole campgrounds, and I hire some of my internet friends that also happen to coach or teach on psychology, and then also how to use kettlebells and how to do handstands and whatever.
Yeah, Roger Lawson went to some of them, right?
Raj Lawson did go. Yeah. Yes, sir. Love Raj. I think by like the second or third camp, whichever one he had attended or helped coach at a number of them. But I think by the third one, we're just like, Raj, like, you can teach classes if you want. Otherwise, like, here's a megaphone and a golf cart. We just want you to drive around and be Roger. Like, that's it. That's literally. And he was like, he had like, carved like the logo. People got segmented into teams, and like he like carved the logo of the team in the back of his head. It's just.
I remember his old website. He called himself the Chief Sexification Officer.
I do remember that.
Those
are the days. I love it. So yeah, so it was just like, hey, let's get a bunch of nerds together and see what happens. And I think the first year we had 150 people, and it was like the movie Camp Nowhere. It was like really like a summer camp for adults. We had a costume party night. We brought a DJ in. My friends were the volunteers. It was just like. Luckily, we had some people that helped us. I think that was actually right around when Baker joined the team full time. This must have been 2014. He was like,
okay,
dude, like, you did a great job marketing this thing, but like, you need to get your act together on like producing the event. I was like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, okay, like let's do that. And then the next year we had somebody join the team, a longtime friend of mine who was in event coordination. So we did 3 camps. And then took a few years off and did another one last year. And we're taking this year off, and at some point hoping to bring them back again. As you know, or I'm sure anybody listening knows, producing events is really challenging and a lot of work, and a ton of risk and little financial reward. But from a community perspective, it's unbelievable. So
the benefits of it are not financial for the most part.
Yep.
I mean, I've hosted 5 events. I did 2 major conferences at the Toronto Convention Center, and none of them made money. But the relationships that I built, the reputation at those events, and then even things like, God, we have a series of testimonial videos and stuff like that for one of our programs, and it was just a whole bunch of like our top customers and students were attending the conference, which is what always happens. So the day before, I rented a studio around the corner. I had a film crew. I got a makeup artist in, and I had everybody. I basically had cars or people going and picking up one by one these folks to shoot all their testimonial videos. And then at night, we threw a party with confetti cannons and stuff like that in the studio. And we still use those videos. Those videos are from 2016. We did them one time. Those videos are still on all the sales pages. The welcome video when you join this program is still the confetti cannon going off and all of the students jumping up and down saying welcome to the new student. You can do that type of stuff at events that would be very difficult or outrageously expensive to do
Sure.
otherwise. Like, how expensive would it have been for me to send a film crew to each of these towns to gather this video, for example? There's a lot of benefits to it that far outweigh.
Yeah.
But it's like, you're a fitness company, dude. You're getting people to dress up in costumes at summer camp?
Yes. Because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted people to like, I mean, we've had people that met at Camp Nerd Fitness and are now married. We had people like
That's
plan the birth of
crazy.
their children around when camp was going to be, which is like really, really funny.
How
Because
do
they
you
didn't want
plan the
to.
birth of your child? We're like, we're not going to have sex this month? Is that how it works?
Yeah, kind of.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly,
okay.
exactly that.
Just, yeah, okay. Well, that's fine.
Yep. I think the thing at camp was,
We're just going to do hand and mouth stuff for a couple weeks, then we're back on it.
oh boy. Anyways, that's really funny. So so camp, it starts as like, hey, come to this fitness camp, but really like the lessons that people take away are
Right.
almost exclusively like psychological
Yes.
benefits and leveling up. And we bring a licensed therapist to camp to help people really not feel alone. It's I've had so many people at camp say to me like, this feels like the first weekend in my life that I've been able to act 100% like myself. Like they have
Wow.
to hide the nerdy parts of themselves from certain friends, and they have to hide the I'm trying to improve myself and get fit from other friends or family members who might not be supportive. So they come to camp and they get to nerd out about the Legend of Zelda or the Lord of the Rings, and then go to a class on emotional eating, and then go
Right.
to a class on how to power lift, and then put on a costume and play Mario Kart 64. And then, there's a silent disco dance party at night.
Of course there
And then
is.
go sit by the campfire, and all the meals are included. It's like a full, like, we rent out the entire, so it's like a giant safe space for people to like
Yeah.
kind of figure out who they are and what their goals are going to be, and then go home with that. It's been really fun having people come back, after a year or two. We have one person named Joni who came to camp, fell in love with powerlifting, and then went home, started lifting at home, became a competitive power lifter. And I think she's 63. So like she started in her late 50s, worked up the courage to come to camp by herself, and she's now a personal trainer. Like, this is what she does for her career. And to see her come back after a year and say like, my life is now different, and then come back 2 years later and say like, hey, I'm trying to write a book. What sort of advice do you have? Or like, hey, this is my clientele. Like, how can I do things better? So
Mm.
it's really like a transformative life experience. Like, it's just the fitness is the thing that kind of gets them in the door.
What I also think, so that is massive. We're gonna put a pin in that and come back. But I also think one of the really key parts of what you're saying is the value of doing hard stuff alongside people and then opening up as part of that experience. There's something about exerting yourself and being in a difficult situation alongside somebody else that allows you to open up and almost feel free to open up more. I did a trip to Greenland a couple years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and the trip was meant to challenge us. I mean, Greenland is a very unforgiving place. We were in the middle of nowhere. There was one point where we hiked a very, very long way on this sort of tundra, did Arctic camping overnight, and then we were 50 miles away from another human being, and we all found a spot where we couldn't see anybody else. So we all like went in like different parts of this area we were in where we couldn't see anybody else. And the person who was leading, his name's Mike, person who was leading the group said, "Okay, I'm not telling you how long this is going to go for, but you're not allowed to move from this spot." And it was about 2 hours where we were by ourselves in the Arctic. and we didn't, the hardest part was not knowing how long. Right? If you know it's going to be 2 hours, you know it's going to be 2 hours you prepare for. But that was on purpose. And then afterwards, we all sat around and talked about areas of awareness, things we were thinking about, what we were exploring, what we found, right? Because you start playing around with all the different tundra stuff, berries, whatever. And you just, because it's hard, you open up in ways you wouldn't otherwise open up. And you almost need to separate from your world. I think what you do there is really special. What I want to talk to you about here, I'm going to put some words in your mouth. You can tell me whether they're right or not. But well, I feel somewhat comfortable because we've talked about some of this stuff before. You don't have a lot of friends who are like fitness people, right? You largely network and spend time with people who are outside of the fitness industry who just align with your other interests, right? And so this idea of learning from the outskirts by pursuing your interest, it seems to me that fitness is kind of what you do, but it's not all of who you are. And you've uniquely allowed yourself to explore and bring that back to what you do to be able to do what you do professionally in a new way. Is that accurate?
I think so. I like I said, I have a wide range of interests and hobbies and things that make me happy. Fitness. I didn't go to college for exercise physiology. I didn't want to be a trainer in person. I'm a voracious reader. I love having deep discussions with people about just wild topics or nerding out about the latest Legend of Zelda or
Right.
Marvel movies or whatever it may be. And I knew I was never going to be the fittest person on Instagram. I was never going to be the most knowledgeable person when it came to nutritional guidance, and like that's totally fine. I always saw myself as kind of like the helper for the people that didn't feel like they had that home otherwise, because I didn't feel like I had that home. I don't resonate with people that take get up at 4 a.m. and take ice baths. Like I don't.
Yeah.
That sounds awful to me,
Yeah.
and nothing I want to do. You couldn't pay me to run a marathon. But I do enjoy picking up heavy stuff and doing handstands. And then I get back to reading. I'm rereading a fantasy series for the third time right now because I'm like, I can't get enough of it.
Which one?
Mistborn. Did I tell you about that one?
So good. So good.
So good. So I'm just like,
except the follow up to it sucked.
The second trilogy.
Yeah.
I remember it being not as good. So like I'm revisiting the first three right now, and then I'm going to revisit those because the fourth book of the second trilogy just came out, and I have a friend here in Nashville who's reading it. So like we're going to do like a mini book club and talk about it.
Oh no,
so, like,
there was one about there was the three Mistborns, right?
Yes.
And the ending to it is like one of the best endings.
The best.
Incredible ending.
Yeah.
But then it was like almost like a Cowboys type one.
Yes. Okay. Right. So that's the second trilogy that takes place in the same universe, but it takes place like 2,000 years later or something.
And it was not good.
I don't remember. I don't remember it being
good.
Not good. I remember it being not as good as the first trilogy, but that first trilogy is maybe the best fantasy fiction I've ever read. So
yeah, it's phenomenal.
So anyway, so yeah, like I just like nerd fitness was like, I'm not going to stand out in the fitness space. Like it's just not going to happen. And also like, that's not my passion. I want to be like the fitness guy for people that don't like
to read Brandon Sanderson's fantasy books or whatever.
Yeah, right. Like I would rather sit at a bar and talk about Brandon Sanderson fantasy than pretty much anything else, but certainly more so than meal timing and exercise programming. And as a result of that, I don't know. I guess people kind of. I'm nice and people kind of like me, so I ended up in like some scenarios with some.
I'm a people person, damn it.
Yeah, right. I ended up just making friends with people in way different areas, right. And that's been so much more rewarding and enjoyable to me. And I've learned so much more from my author friends, I think.
Yes.
Because that's like, I like taking the lessons that they're teaching or that we're discussing in philosophy or habit building or behavioral psychology, like taking those things, but applying it to nerd fitness with my angle to it. Like that's so much more fun to me than like, what's the latest PubMed study? Like I chase my interest really.
You figure out pretty quickly that there's really only a few sort of fundamental overarching things that are important, and it's very interesting. Like, to me, marketing is marketing is marketing is marketing. I'm like marketing a book, but marketing a book is the same as marketing a fitness program, is the same as marketing a course, is the same as marketing software. The principles are the same. And I mean, the specifics of what you do might change, but the principles are very, very similar. And you start to figure that out, I think, when you talk to other people, and then you start to figure out how you could kind of make it yours. But what was interesting about that conversation we had, and why I kind of like went deeper and then you fought me on it, and then I tried to like go deeper again about the fantasy series, is it was off topic. It was completely off topic. My guess is 95% of the people who are listening to this are like, what are those jackals talking about? But they kind of accepted it. We didn't dwell on it too long. They kind of accepted it. Whereas 5% were like, yo, I'm with those two guys. And I think that, to me, is, if not the one take home theme idea of letting your geek flag fly. I have always liked Brandon Sanderson's stuff. Elysium was phenomenal as well. I've read a lot of his work. And I know a lot of other folks have too. And it's just an area of connection, between you and I, which is cool. And we've spoken about books before. I didn't know that that was like your favorite series, but we've spoken about books before. But there was something that I read years back. I attribute it to Tim Ferriss. I think it came from him. I don't know. Back when he was a lowly blogger and didn't do anything else, before any of his books, anything. Well, it was probably after 4 Hour Work. I've never actually read any of his books, in all honesty. But way back when he was just a blogger that like people who blog knew about him, but not anybody else. And he wrote an article. He wrote something about like how to make your blog stand out. And one of the things he said that stuck at me is he said, the key to a really effective blog, which now I bring forward into content, the key to effective content, the key to an effective business is do something that 10% of your readership is going to love and 90% won't care about. And then the trick is to rotate that 10% every time. General apathy in business is a death sentence. You're better to do something that a small percentage of people absolutely love and that everybody else just kind of doesn't care about. Like, you're not like being combative. But what we just talked about with that fantasy example was that, wasn't it? It's like 5-10% of people are like, yo, I love those kinds of books too. Everybody else didn't really care.
Sure. I mean, if you read any article on Nerd Fitness, you'll probably find like 5 to 10 Easter eggs hidden throughout each article. There'll be links to random YouTube videos or memes that like some people won't get. But like, if you know, and you'll be like, all right, I trust this guy because he also understands, like he gets me.
Yeah.
And that's, like it's really important. Trust and honesty, integrity is like the most important thing to me, especially in this world of people stealing other people's content and people lying about how they ended up with the figure that they ended up with, or whatever it may be. Like, I want to be as transparent and as much of myself as possible. I shared something recently on I think it was on Threads or maybe Instagram, but like, this is going to be so random and out of the blue, but there was a concert that T-Pain, yes, I'm in love with a stripper, that song, that mm-hmm. T-Pain did a Tiny Desk concert for NPR back in 2014. And everybody was like, oh man, T-Pain is like super talented. Like, who saw this coming? Like, this is amazing. Everybody go watch this. Like, I am so surprised. And there was an interview with T-Pain after it. He was like, man, like that pissed me off. He was like, how do you like, did you think I could only do auto-tune? Like, you still have to write amazing songs. You still need to know how to sing. You need to know how to write great hooks. Like, you have to do all of these things. So he said something like, at some point, I realized like I just wanted to make stuff that made me happy. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like it, great, it's not for you. But if you do like it, welcome to the club. And I think for that first 2 years of Nerd Fitness, I was trying to write the stuff that was universal and generic and not for everybody. And it wasn't until I said, I'm going to write stuff for me. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, then it's not for you. And like, as soon as I gave myself the permission to say, like, here is who Nerd Fitness is for. And here's who it's not for.
Yeah,
like,
and
if you
that's
have no
fine.
problem getting up and running a marathon, like, this probably isn't for you. Like, this is community for people that want to feel better about themselves. They probably come from a community that is underserved. They come from a group of people that like do not resonate with Instagram fitness fanatics. Like, that's fine. Like, those people have their people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not them and those people piss you off or turn you off, welcome. Like, we'd love to have you at Nerd Fitness. Like, we're all disasters. We're all trying to figure it out. We're going to do it together. Welcome home. Like, we're going to be like that digital hug. And like, if it doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. I didn't make it for you. Like, I made it for me and for my community. So I think it's mixing in those things that like really show your personality, can be really valuable in standing out, because it's you don't have to be for everybody. And if you are, then nobody's gonna it's gonna be so generic that it just never makes it.
Yeah, the only surefire way to make sure you're for nobody is to try to be for everybody, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's a I mean that's one of the global truths of business. It's so great to have this conversation with you, because I think about what's really made you stand out. And to me, one of the words that keeps coming up is patience and exploration. You weren't in a rush. You didn't quite know what you were doing. You didn't put pressure on yourself to know what you were doing. You followed your own interests. And that is your own interest in terms of like video games and books and nerd culture and all this type of stuff. Before it was cool to be like following nerd culture, you're like, yo, this is who I am. And then it ended up being cool, but you say you didn't anticipate it, that's fine. There was always people who identified with it. There was always enough of them. But at the same time, you also like met people and connected with people that weren't your industry. You weren't networking. You were just like connecting, like you said with Mark, right? With Mark Manson, how you just like talk to him about video games all the time. How many people do you think in his life now that he's had a super mega bestseller book that he meets that he can just chill out and talk about video games with? And you by exploring those things, it makes you more interesting, more varied, and it builds a moat around your business in ways that would be very, very difficult to replicate. And I think that's pretty special. I'm excited that I heard a little bit more about it. So, Steve, thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me. It's always great to talk to you, and I feel like our conversations very rarely revolve around fitness or business. So
jump up and down 10 times. That's your workout. Like fitness is not hard. Like it's not like there's not much you can say. Like jump up and down. Like if you do something that you start to get good at, it becomes a bad fat loss burning workout. If you do something you suck at and look like a flailing fish out of water, it's a good fat burning workout until you become more efficient with it, and then it becomes a bad fat burning workout. Like that's kind of fitness. Like it ain't that complicated. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Like I also like, I mean this as respectfully and comically and friendly as possible. Like I don't care how you work out. Like I literally could care less, but I do care about your opinions on Brandon Sanderson, and we could certainly talk about Elantris, or we could talk about the his new like planned 14 book series that he's only written the first 4 of, like the Way of Kings, and where that's going to go. And like, oh man, like I could talk about that all day. Yeah. And like that's so much more enjoyable to me. And as a result of me having those types of conversations with people on those levels, then if they're like, hey man, I have a book coming out, can you promote it? I'm like, of course I will. Or like, I don't care what they've been doing up until then. I just like, they're good people and I like having conversations with them. So then beyond that, like for this, you were like, hey, can you come on this thing and talk about, I don't even know what we were going to talk about today. I didn't care. I was just like, yeah, I'll spend an hour with you. That sounds awesome. Like,
can you
for
come
a good
on this
cause,
thing and do
like,
this thing?
cool.
Yeah,
why
sure.
not?
Yeah. No,
and then you kept talking and I was like, dude, you don't need to sell me anymore. I'm in.
I know, that was funny. That did happen. I remember that. I'm in. Oh, but then there's this, but this was, dude, shut up. I'm in. All right. Steve, appreciate you, man. I'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for this.
Thanks for having me.
You got it.